The responsibility is immense. The trust absolute. Babysitting. But what happens when the playful silence of a sleeping house is shattered by something truly terrifying? Welcome, guardians of the night, to Nightmare True Horror. Tonight, we share 4 true accounts where the innocence of childcare collided with inexplicable dread. What lingering anxieties from your own late-night vigils surface as you listen? The comments are a safe space for your own unsettling recollections. If the thought of peering into these domestic nightmares holds a grim fascination, consider this your invitation to subscribe. For the stories we've carefully curated tonight are particularly unnerving, and the final, most disturbing revelation is one you'll definitely want to stay for. To truly understand the depths of fear, the sound of shattering glass from downstairs cut through the twins' bedtime giggles at exactly 8:47 p.m. Not the sharp crack of something accidentally dropped, but the prolonged crash of a window being deliberately broken. Glass hitting hardwood floors in a cascade that seemed to go on forever. Emma and Ethan, both 6 years old, stopped mid-sentence in their argument about which stuffed animal got to sleep on top tonight. In the sudden silence that followed, we could all hear something that made my stomach drop. The soft crunch of footsteps moving carefully through broken glass. Someone trying to be quiet but not quite succeeding. "Aunt Jess," Emma whispered, using the title their parents had taught them, even though I wasn't really their aunt. What was that noise? I pressed my finger to my lips, my heart hammering as I strained to listen. The footsteps had stopped, but I could feel a presence in the house below us. Someone who didn't belong. Someone who had just forced their way into the Hartley family's suburban home while I was responsible for their most precious possessions. "Are we playing a game?" Ethan asked, his voice carrying that mixture of excitement and uncertainty that kids get when they sense adult fear, but don't understand it. Before I could answer, the footsteps resumed. Slow, deliberate, methodical, moving through the kitchen toward the living room. Someone who seemed to know the layout of the house. Someone who had been here before. My name is Jessica Chen, and 3 hours earlier, babysitting the Hartley twins had seemed like easy money. It was Saturday night, in November 2023, and I was a 19-year-old college sophomore looking to make some extra cash while studying for finals. The Hartleys lived in one of those perfect suburban neighborhoods in Scottsdale, where the biggest worry was usually kids riding bikes without helmets. Tom and Sarah Hartley had been regular clients for 8 months, ever since I'd started with the local babysitting service. They were the ideal employers, always paid on time, left detailed instructions, never came home too late. Their kids were well behaved, their house was comfortable, and the job usually involved little more than making dinner, supervising homework, and getting the twins to bed by 9 p.m. Tonight had been no different until the window broke. Tom and Sarah were at their anniversary dinner downtown, not due back until midnight. The twins had eaten their chicken nuggets, completed their weekend homework, and we just finished reading 2 chapters of their current favorite book when the sound of breaking glass changed everything. "Girls, boys, come here quickly," I whispered, using the calm but urgent voice I'd learned from babysitting training. "We're going to play a quiet game." I gathered them from their twin beds, my mind racing through the limited options available to us. The kids' room was on the 2nd floor at the front of the house, which meant whoever was downstairs would see us if we tried to escape through the window. The landline was in the kitchen, exactly where the intruder was now moving. My cell phone was in my backpack downstairs. The only phone within reach was the cordless handset in the master bedroom. The footsteps were moving again, and I could track their progress through the house by the creaking of familiar floorboards. Kitchen to dining room to living room, now heading toward the front staircase that led directly to where we were. "Follow me," I whispered to the twins, taking their hands and leading them across the hallway to their parents' room. "We're going to hide in Mommy and Daddy's bathroom until they come home." The master bathroom was the most defensible space I could think of. Solid door, deadbolt lock, no windows large enough for an adult to climb through. If I could get us in there and call for help, we might be able to wait out whatever was happening downstairs. Emma started to protest about being in their parents' private space, but the sound of the front door opening and closing silenced her immediately. Whoever had broken in through the window was now letting someone else into the house. We weren't dealing with a single intruder. There were at least two of them. I locked the bathroom door and immediately began pulling towels and bath mats against it, creating what I hoped was additional sound dampening. The twins watched with wide eyes as I grabbed the cordless phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? There are people breaking into the house where I'm babysitting, I whispered into the phone. We're trapped upstairs with two children. What's the address? I gave the dispatcher the Hartley's address, my voice barely audible as I tried to keep the call quiet. Below us, I could hear two distinct sets of footsteps now, moving through the house with increasing confidence. Are you in immediate danger? They're in the house. We're hiding in a bathroom on the second floor. Officers are on the way. Stay on the line with me. Do not hang up. Ethan tugged on my sleeve. Jess, why are we whispering? Are we in trouble? Before I could answer, we heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps on the staircase, heavy boots on hardwood, climbing slowly toward the second floor. They weren't trying to be quiet anymore. Someone's coming upstairs, I whispered into the phone. Continue to stay hidden and quiet. 6 minutes felt like 6 hours when you're listening to strangers search through the bedrooms of the children you're supposed to protect. The footsteps moved systematically. First to the twins' room, where we could hear drawers being opened and furniture moved. Then to the guest room, where the same methodical searching continued. They're looking for something specific, I realized, speaking more to myself than to the dispatcher. Emma had wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing her face against my side to muffle any sound she might make. Ethan sat on the bathroom floor, clutching his stuffed dinosaur and staring at the door with the kind of intensity that only scared children possess. The searching continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then the footsteps stopped directly outside the master bedroom. We could hear voices now, low, urgent conversation between two men discussing what they'd found and what they were still looking for. Check the closets again, one of them said. Tom said he hid it somewhere Sarah wouldn't accidentally find it. Tom. They knew Tom Hartley by name. This wasn't a random break-in. These men had specific knowledge about the family, about something Tom had hidden in his own house. What about the bathroom? The second voice asked. My blood turned to ice. I put my hand over the phone's mouthpiece and gave the twins my most serious look, pressing my finger to my lips. Both children nodded, understanding that this was no longer a game. The doorknob turned. The door was locked, but the handle rattled as someone tested it from the other side. Then came the sound of something being inserted into the lock. Not violent jimmying, but the careful work of someone who knew how to defeat a simple residential deadbolt. Are they coming in? Emma whispered, so quietly I almost couldn't hear her. I nodded, pulling both children closer to me and positioning myself between them and the door. The phone was still connected to 911, but I could no longer risk speaking into it. The lock clicked open. Well, a voice said from the doorway. Looks like Tom's got a babysitter tonight. I turned to face two men in dark clothing, both wearing latex gloves and carrying small flashlights. The taller one was middle-aged with graying hair. The shorter one younger with a scar running from his left ear to his jawline. Neither looked surprised to find us there. Kids, go sit on the bed, the older man said, his voice almost gentle. We're not here to hurt anyone. We just need to have a conversation with your babysitter. Don't move, I told the twins, keeping my voice steady, despite the terror threatening to overwhelm me. The man with the scar smiled. Smart girl. Protective instincts. I respect that. He stepped into the bathroom, and I could see he was carrying something in his other hand. A photograph. He held it up so I could see it clearly. Tom Hartley shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize outside what looked like a casino. Your boss Tom has been a very naughty boy, Scar said. Been skimming money from people who don't like to be stolen from. And we think he's hidden our property somewhere in this house. I don't know anything about Tom's business, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. Of course you don't. Of course you don't. But you know this house pretty well, don't you? Been babysitting here for months. Notice anything unusual? Any new hiding spots? Any places Tom spends a lot of time that seem odd? The older man had moved to the bathroom's small window, checking the street below. Neighbors are starting to turn on their porch lights, he reported. We need to wrap this up. That's when I realized they could hear the sirens too. Faint but growing closer. The 911 call was still connected, and the dispatcher had been listening to everything. Here's what's going to happen, Scar continued. You're going to help us search this house properly. Kids' perspective, places adults might miss. You find what we're looking for, and everyone goes home safe tonight. And if I don't, his smile disappeared. Let's not find out. Emma started crying then, quiet tears that she tried to hide behind her hands. The sound seemed to affect even these hardened men, and I saw the older one glance uncomfortably at his partner. Look, we don't want to involve the kids, he said. This is business, not personal. Just help us find Tom's stash, and we'll be gone before the parents get home. The sirens were definitely closer now, maybe 3 blocks away. Both men could hear them too, and their casual demeanor was beginning to crack. Time's up, the older man said. We search together now, or we take everyone with us and search later. That threat galvanized me in a way that fear hadn't. Whatever Tom Hartley had done, whatever money he'd stolen or debts he'd incurred, these children were not going to pay the price for his mistakes. The study, I said quickly. Tom spends a lot of time in his study. There's a desk with drawers that always stay locked. It was true. I'd noticed during previous babysitting visits that Tom's home office was always locked, and he was very particular about keeping the kids out of that room. Show us, Scar demanded. I picked up Emma and took Ethan's hand, leading them out of the bathroom. The sirens were clearly audible now, maybe 2 blocks away. We had maybe 90 seconds before the police arrived. The study's downstairs, I said, moving toward the staircase. You first, the older man said, gesturing with his flashlight. We made it halfway down the stairs before the first police car turned onto the street, its red and blue lights strobing through the front windows. Both men cursed simultaneously. Back upstairs, Scar ordered. Now. But Emma chose that moment to break free from my arms and run toward the front door, screaming at the top of her lungs. Ethan followed his sister, and suddenly both children were racing through the house, yelling for help while police cars screeched to a halt outside. The 2 men looked at each other, their careful plan dissolving into chaos. The older one headed for the back of the house, while Scar grabbed my arm. This isn't over, he said. Tom owes money to people who always collect their debts. Then he was gone, disappearing through the same broken window they'd used to enter, leaving me alone with 2 screaming children and the sound of police officers surrounding the house. The investigation revealed that Tom Hartley had indeed been embezzling money from his employer, a construction company with rumored ties to organized crime. He'd been skimming funds from legitimate contracts and funneling the money through offshore accounts, apparently believing he could cover his tracks long enough to disappear with his family. The 2 men were never caught, despite excellent descriptions and fingerprints left throughout the house. Tom and Sarah Hartley returned from their anniversary dinner to find their home a crime scene and their carefully constructed life falling apart. They moved to another state within 6 weeks, leaving no forwarding address. I never learned whether Tom had actually hidden money in the house, or whether the men ever found what they were looking for. But I do know this. 6 months later, I was babysitting for another family when I noticed a familiar car parked across the street. The same older man from that night, sitting behind the wheel, watching the house through binoculars. When I called the police, the car was gone by the time they arrived. But the message was clear. Some debts follow you no matter how far you run, and some people never stop collecting what they're owed. I don't babysit anymore. The money isn't worth the risk of becoming collateral damage in someone else's dangerous choices. That babysitting job turned into a nightmare. But the night is far from over, and another chilling true account of a night gone wrong awaits. The notification chimed on my phone at 9:23 p.m. as I sat in the eerily quiet living room of what I thought was the Henderson family home. Parents delayed until 2 a.m. due to emergency. Extra compensation approved, but something about the silence felt wrong. No background noise from neighbors, no hum of typical household appliances. just the hollow tick of a grandfather clock that seemed too loud in a pristine space. I'd been watching 8-year-old Sophie for 3 hours, and she'd been unusually compliant, almost robotically so. When I had arrived, the parents had rushed out with barely an introduction, leaving cash on the counter and hurried instructions about bedtime routines. But now, studying the house more carefully, I noticed details that made my skin crawl. Family photos with faces that didn't match the couple who'd hired me, mail addressed to different names, and a child who seemed more anxious than tired. The scratching sound from upstairs made me freeze. Rhythmic, deliberate, like someone trying to get my attention from inside the walls. I'm Emma Rodriguez, a 21-year-old college student who'd been babysitting since high school to pay for tuition. Sitter Connect was supposed to be the premium app. Verified families, background checks, instant payment. The Henderson job had seemed perfect. Well-paying, good neighborhood, easy kid. But as I climbed the stairs to investigate the sound, I found Sophie's bedroom door ajar when I'd closed it earlier. Inside, she was sitting up in bed, clutching a stuffed animal, her eyes wide with fear. "Sophie, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? They said you'd come," she whispered. "They said to be good and quiet." "Who said that?" Before she could answer, I heard voices downstairs. Multiple people entering through what sounded like the front door. My blood turned ice. The Hendersons weren't supposed to return for hours. I crept to the staircase and listened to unfamiliar voices discussing mundane things. Grocery shopping, weekend plans, normal family conversation. These weren't the people who'd hired me. "Sophie," I whispered urgently, returning to her room. "What's your mommy's real name?" "Sarah Mitchell," she said, tears starting to flow. "The scary people said if I told anyone they'd hurt mommy and daddy." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. I wasn't babysitting the Hendersons' child. I was watching someone else's daughter in someone else's home. The parents who'd hired me were criminals who'd somehow gained access to this house and were using me as unwitting cover for whatever they were planning. I grabbed Sophie and my phone, locking us in her bedroom while I called 911. Through the door, I could hear the real family moving around downstairs, probably discovering signs of our presence. 911, what's your emergency? "I'm a babysitter, but I think I'm in the wrong house. The real family just came home, and I don't know who hired me." The dispatcher stayed on the line while I heard confused, then alarmed voices downstairs. Someone was coming up the stairs. "Sophie, where are you?" A woman's voice, filled with panic and relief. When the bedroom door opened, a blonde woman I'd never seen rushed in, gathering Sophie in her arms, while a man behind her stared at me in shock. "Who are you?" the woman demanded. "What are you doing with my daughter?" "I'm Emma. I was hired through Sitter Connect to babysit. I thought you were the Hendersons." The man was already on his phone with police. "We've been out of town for 3 days. We never hired a babysitter." The investigation that followed revealed a sophisticated operation. The fake Hendersons had been surveilling the Mitchell family for weeks, learning their travel schedule through social media posts. They created fraudulent Sitter Connect profiles and hired me as cover while they systematically robbed houses in the neighborhood, using the Mitchell home as their base of operations. Sophie had been terrorized into compliance with threats against her parents. The criminals had been using her as a prop to make their presence in the neighborhood seem legitimate. Just a normal family with a babysitter. Police found evidence of multiple burglaries, stolen goods stored in the Mitchell's garage, and a sophisticated identity theft operation running through fake gig economy accounts. But the perpetrators had vanished by the time officers arrived, leaving behind only burner phones and fake documentation. 3 weeks later, I received a new job request through a different app. Premium pay, last-minute emergency, prepaid. The profile photo showed different people, but the messaging style was identical. I reported it immediately, but the account was deleted within hours. They're still out there, creating new identities, targeting new families, recruiting unwitting accomplices through the gig economy apps that promise easy money and flexible work. And I realize now that I wasn't just a babysitter that night. I was a pawn in someone else's game, chosen specifically because I was young, desperate for money, and naive enough to walk into a stranger's house without asking the right questions. The scariest part isn't that criminals are using technology to commit crimes. It's that they're using our trust in that technology to turn us into accomplices. If that story made you think twice about babysitting, prepare yourself. The terrifying truth of another evening of dread is coming. The first clap of thunder was so loud, it rattled the old farmhouse windows. And little Lily, who was only 6, burrowed deeper under the blanket fort we'd built in the living room. Her 8-year-old brother, Sam, tried to look brave, but I saw his eyes dart nervously towards the darkening sky. Then the lights flickered, buzzed, and died, plunging us into a sudden suffocating blackness. That's when I heard it. Not the wind, not the rain, but a soft, almost inaudible click from the direction of the back porch, like a latch being tested. My heart gave a sickening lurch. Was it just the old house settling in the storm? Or was someone out there, using the cover of the chaos to see if we were vulnerable? My name is Sarah. I'm 19, a college sophomore, and I've been babysitting for the Henderson family for about 3 years now. Their farmhouse is pretty isolated, about 5 miles out of our small town of Oak Haven, surrounded by dense woods and rolling fields. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson were at a charity gala in the city, an hour's drive away, not expected back until well after midnight. There's a backup generator in the shed out back if the power goes. Mr. Henderson had reminded me before they left. Keys on the hook by the kitchen door. Just follow the instructions. Famous last words. The storm hit with a vengeance around 9 p.m. Rain lashing down, wind howling like a banshee. The kids were already a bit spooked. After the power cut, Lily started to cry. "It's okay, sweetie," I said, my voice a little too bright, trying to sound reassuring. "It's just a storm. We'll get the generator going, and we'll have lights and cartoons back in no time." I fumbled for my phone. It screened a welcome beacon in the inky blackness. No service, of course. The storm was probably affecting the local cell tower. "I'll go check the generator," I told Sam, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. "You stay here with Lily, okay? Sing her a song or something." He nodded, his face pale in the phone's glow. I grabbed the heavy flashlight Mr. Henderson kept by the door and the key to the generator shed. The wind tore at me as I stepped out onto the back porch, rain instantly plastering my hair to my face. The shed was about 20 yards from the house, a dark, squat shape against the even darker, storm-tossed trees. The generator itself was an older, heavy-duty gasoline model. I found the instruction card, laminated and slightly yellowed, tucked beside it. Pull the choke, flip the switch, pull the cord. Simple enough. I pulled the choke, flipped the switch, gripped the cord, and pulled. Nothing. Pulled again, harder. Silence. Not even a sputter. My flashlight beam danced over the engine. That's when I saw it. The fuel line, a thin rubber hose, had been neatly, cleanly sliced through, right near the carburetor. This wasn't storm damage. This was deliberate. A cold dread washed over me, colder than the wind and rain. Someone had sabotaged the generator, but why? And when? I scanned the dark perimeter of the yard, my flashlight beam cutting nervous sways through the storm. Nothing but the swaying trees and the driving rain. "Okay, Sarah, don't panic," I told myself. Maybe it was old, cracked, just happened to give way. But I knew deep down, that was a lie. The cut was too clean. My next thought was the circuit breaker. Maybe it was just a tripped breaker, not a full outage. The main electrical box was on the outside wall of the house, near the back porch. I hurried back, shielding my flashlight from the worst of the rain. The metal door of the box was slightly ajar. Strange. I was sure it was usually closed tight. Strange. I was sure it was usually closed tight. I pulled it open. The main breaker was in the off position. That wasn't right. Breakers usually trip to a middle position, or all the way to off with a distinct click you can almost feel. This felt deliberate. Then, my light fell on the heavy main power line that ran from the pole at the edge of the property to the meter box. It was cut cleanly, as if with heavy-duty cable cutters, and leading away from the base of the electrical box, disappearing into the muddy edge of the woods. were fresh footprints, large, booted, heading away from the house, then seemingly looping back towards the darker, denser part of the tree line that overlooked the back porch. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just a power outage. This was a trap. Someone had deliberately cut the power, sabotaged the generator, isolating us. They knew we were here. They knew the Hendersons were out. And those footprints, they were watching, waiting. For what? Was I overreacting? A hysterical little laugh bubbled up in my throat. No. The evidence was undeniable. The kids. Oh God, the kids. I raced back inside, slamming and bolting the back door, my heart hammering against my ribs. Lily was sobbing, Sam trying his best to comfort her, his own face a mask of fear. "What's wrong, Sarah?" he whispered. "Why are the lights still out?" "It's okay, buddy." I lied, trying to keep the terror out of my voice. "The storm's just worse than we thought. We need to stay inside. Stay quiet, okay? And stay away from the windows." I herded them into the master bedroom, the furthest room from the back of the house, the one with the fewest windows. I barricaded the door with a heavy dresser. My phone still showed no service. We were cut off, trapped. Then the tapping started, soft at first, on the kitchen window at the back of the house. Tap, tap, tap. My breath hitched. The kids heard it too. Lily's sobs intensified. Sam clutched my arm, his knuckles white. The tapping moved along the side of the house, closer to the living room. Then, a louder, more insistent rapping on the front door. Not a friendly knock, authoritative. Calculated. "Mrs. Henderson?" "Mr. Henderson." It wasn't Mr. Henderson's voice. It wasn't anyone I recognized. "Don't answer it," I whispered to the kids, my voice hoarse. The rapping stopped. For a long, agonizing moment, there was only the sound of the storm and our own ragged breathing. Then, a floorboard creaked on the front porch. He was still out there, listening, waiting. The climax came with a sound that made all three of us jump. The shattering of glass from the kitchen. I grabbed the heavy iron fireplace poker I'd seen earlier, my only weapon. "Stay here. Don't make a sound." I hissed at the kids, then crept out of the bedroom towards the kitchen. My flashlight beam, shaking violently, illuminated the broken window pane. Rain and wind whipping through the opening. And then, a hand, gloved and dark, reached through, fumbling for the window latch. I didn't think. I screamed, a raw, guttural sound, and swung the poker with all my might, connecting with the reaching arm with a sickening thud. A roar of pain from outside. The hand recoiled. I could hear cursing, then the sound of footsteps, heavy and urgent, retreating from the porch. But then, new sounds. From the back of the house. Banging, crashing. More than one of them. They were trying to get in from multiple points. I scrambled back to the bedroom, my heart a frantic drum. "We have to hide," I told the kids. The only place was the deep, old-fashioned closet. We piled in, pulling clothes, blankets around us, plunging ourselves into near total darkness. We could hear them inside the house now. Heavy footsteps. Low, guttural voices calling out. "Kids, you in here? We're here to help. Your parents sent us." Lies. All lies. The doorknob to the bedroom began to rattle. Then, a splintering crack as the door was kicked open. Footsteps entered the bedroom. Heavy, slow, circling. My hand was clamped over Lily's mouth, trying to stifle her terrified sobs. I could smell them. Damp earth, stale sweat, and that same faint, metallic, coppery scent I'd noticed near the generator shed when I thought about it later. They were searching. Then, a voice, right outside the closet door. "Well now, what have we here?" The closet door handle began to turn. In that split second, as the door started to creak open, a sound cut through the storm, through our terror, the unmistakable, blessed wail of police sirens, growing rapidly closer. The footsteps in the bedroom froze. Curses. Then a frantic scramble, the sound of the bedroom window being forced open, then thuds as they dropped into the muddy yard outside. The sirens were almost on top of us. The aftermath was a blur. Flashing lights, uniformed officers. The Hendersons arriving, their faces masks of horror and disbelief. It turned out Mrs. Henderson, unable to reach me, had called the local sheriff's department. Her vague unease about the storm, and my lack of contact enough to trigger a welfare check. That call, that instinct, had saved us. They found more footprints, lots of them around the house, leading back into the deep woods. They found a pry bar near the broken kitchen window, the sabotage generator, the cut power line. It was all clear evidence of a planned, sophisticated home invasion, targeting an isolated house during a storm, knowing the occupants would be vulnerable, cut off. They believed it was a local crew, known for targeting rural properties, though they were never definitively caught for what happened at the Hendersons. The motive was likely robbery, perhaps worse given the isolation and the presence of children. I don't babysit at the Henderson farmhouse anymore. I barely babysit at all. The sound of a thunderstorm still sends a jolt of fear through me. The sight of a darkened house on a lonely road makes my stomach clench. They say the crew that targeted us might have been responsible for other, similar incidents in remote areas, using storms as cover, preying on the vulnerable. They were never proven to be connected to our night of terror, but the possibility lingers, and sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear that soft, almost gentle tapping at a window, and I see those fresh, muddy footprints leading out of the darkness towards the perceived safety of a home. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the bone that some storms bring more than just rain and wind. They bring the predators who hunt in the dark, waiting for the lights to go out. A quiet night in, watching kids, until it isn't. And our next true horror story shows just how quickly peace can shatter. The soft hiss of automatic sprinklers across the manicured lawns of Willowbrook Estates was the only sound breaking the warm California evening as I pushed baby Emma's stroller along the perfectly paved sidewalk. The air was thick with jasmine and the faint chemical scent of chlorinated pool water drifting from hidden backyards. It was 9:23 p.m., and this gated community felt like an impenetrable fortress of wealth and security. But then I saw it. A black Mercedes GLS parked 2 streets over, identical in every detail to the Hartwell family's SUV sitting in their driveway. Same tinted windows, same chrome accents, even the same dealer sticker. Through the windshield, I could make out the silhouette of someone sitting motionless behind the wheel, just watching. My pace slowed instinctively. In my peripheral vision, I caught the figure turning slightly as I passed, tracking my movement with predatory focus. The hairs on my neck stood up as an inexplicable dread settled in my stomach like ice water. Why would someone sit in an identical car, in the dark, doing nothing but observe? I'm Ashley Chen, a 21-year-old psychology major who'd been babysitting for affluent families to pay for college. The Hartwells had hired me through an exclusive service that catered to Orange County's elite. Thorough background checks, stellar references, premium rates. Their Willowbrook Estates home was worth $4 million, protected by private security patrols and state-of-the-art surveillance systems. It should have been the safest job imaginable. Mrs. Hartwell had been unusually nervous when she left, giving me detailed instructions about Emma's routine, the security codes, and emergency protocols. Don't open the door for anyone, she'd emphasized, her manicured fingers gripping my arm. Not even security. Call us first, always. Now, as I approached their circular driveway, my heart began hammering against my ribs. The Hartwells' black Mercedes was gone, but they weren't supposed to return from their charity gala until after midnight. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no messages. The front door, which I'd carefully locked with a deadbolt before our walk, stood slightly ajar. A sliver of the marble foyer was visible through the gap, lit by the soft glow of accent lighting. Emma stirred in her stroller, making soft sounds that seemed unnaturally loud in the evening silence. The neighborhood was too quiet. No distant traffic, no sounds of life from the other mansions. Even the security patrol that usually circled every 20 minutes was nowhere to be seen. "Hello?" I called softly, lifting Emma from the stroller. "Mr. Hartwell? Mrs. Hartwell?" Only my own voice echoed back from the cavernous interior. I pushed the door open wider and stepped inside, Emma warm and trusting in my arms. The house felt different. The air seemed charged with tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm. That's when I noticed the muddy footprints on the pristine white marble, large boot prints that definitely didn't belong to the Hartwells' expensive Italian leather shoes. Someone had been inside. Someone might still be inside. I backed toward the door, fumbling for my phone to call 911, when I heard the soft electronic chime of the garage door opening. Relief flooded through me. The Hartwells were home early, but the man who stepped through the interior garage door wasn't Mr. Hartwell. He was tall, wearing dark clothes and latex gloves, carrying what looked like a tablet and professional surveillance equipment. When he saw me holding Emma, he smiled with the calculated warmth of a predator who'd found his prey exactly where expected. "Ashley," he said, using my name like we were old acquaintances. "Perfect timing. Who are you?" I whispered, instinctively backing toward the front entrance. "Someone who's been studying the Hartwells for months, learning their schedules, their security patterns, their childcare arrangements." He moved closer, casually blocking my escape route. "Did you really think it was coincidence that they hired you tonight?" The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. This wasn't random. It was orchestrated, planned with me as an unwitting participant. "The charity gala," I breathed, "doesn't exist. I sent them very convincing invitations to a venue that's permanently closed for renovations. By the time they figure it out and drive home, this will all be finished." He gestured around the opulent house with casual familiarity. "But kidnapping requires the right setup. Can't just grab a baby from a gated community without inside help." "I'm not helping you. You already did. A babysitter taking the child for an evening walk while the parents are conveniently away. Perfect cover. No forced entry. No obvious crime scene. Just a tragic kidnapping that happened on your watch." Emma began fussing, sensing the tension. Her cries echoed through the empty house like an alarm. "How long have you been planning this?" 6 months of surveillance. Tech executive father. Pharmaceutical heiress mother. Baby worth tens of millions in ransom. His voice was matter-of-fact, discussing kidnapping like a business transaction. "I've been inside this house 4 times, learning the security system, cloning their key fobs, studying their routines. The security cameras, looped with footage from last week. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right equipment and a service technician's uniform." He checked his watch. "But we're running behind schedule. Time to go." As he reached for Emma, I noticed something that gave me hope. My phone was still connected to the house Wi-Fi, and I'd been live streaming our walk to my Instagram story. If anyone was watching, I pretended to check the time while frantically typing, "Help! Kidnapper at Hartwell House, Willowbrook Estates. Call police now." "Smart girl," he said, having watched my phone activity. "But social media takes time to generate response. I'll be long gone before anyone acts on that." That's when we heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Multiple vehicles, engines still running. "Impossible," he muttered, checking his watch again. "They shouldn't be back for hours." Through the window, I saw the real Hartwells running toward the house, followed by 2 private security guards and what looked like police officers. Mrs. Hartwell was screaming my name. The man cursed and lunged for Emma, but I was ready. I threw my phone at his face and ran toward the front door. The baby clutched protectively against my chest. "Ashley!" Mrs. Hartwell burst through the entrance just as the man tackled me from behind, sending us both crashing into the marble foyer. The next few minutes were chaos. Security guards restraining the intruder, police sirens approaching, the Hartwells sobbing with relief as they held their daughter. Through it all, I kept thinking about that identical car, the perfect surveillance, the months of planning. The investigation revealed a sophisticated criminal network targeting wealthy families through their domestic staff. My Instagram story had been seen by a college friend who recognized the Hartwell house and immediately called them. The fake charity invitation was traced to an elaborate digital operation, and the stolen Mercedes contained surveillance equipment and detailed floor plans of dozens of homes. The man, David Kruger, had been operating for 3 years, using babysitters and nannies as unwitting accomplices in kidnapping schemes. He received 25 years, but during his trial, Something he said still haunts me. You think this was sophisticated? There are networks of us now, sharing information, targeting the same families. Social media makes it so easy to study your victims, learn their vulnerabilities. 6 months later, I received a friend request on Instagram from a profile with no posts. When I checked their activity, they'd been viewing all my stories, studying my routine, learning my schedule. The profile was following dozens of other babysitters, nannies, and childcare workers across Southern California. Someone else is watching, planning, studying our digital footprints for their next operation. And in a world where our entire lives are documented online, true privacy and safety may be nothing more than an illusion we tell ourselves to sleep at night. The soft scrape of bicycle tires on asphalt had been circling the Hendersons' cul-de-sac for 23 minutes, each pass slower and more deliberate than the last. Through the living room's bay window, I could see 4 teenagers on mountain bikes, their faces partially shadowed by hoodies. Despite the warm October evening in Millbrook, Ohio, they weren't just riding aimlessly. They were studying the house, timing their circuits to my movements from room to room, noting which lights were on and when they dimmed. Each time I appeared at a window, they'd slow to an almost stop, stare directly at me with an intensity that made my skin crawl, then resume their lazy patrol. When I went upstairs to check on baby Emma, the scraping stopped entirely. By the time I returned to the window, the bikes were gone. But that feeling of being watched remained, settling over the quiet suburban street like fog. Why would local teenagers be so fascinated by a house where a college student was babysitting alone? I'm Riley Martinez, a 20-year-old psychology major at Ohio State, home for fall break and picking up babysitting gigs to help with textbook costs. Millbrook was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's dogs by name, and teenagers were supposed to be more interested in homecoming dances than stalking babysitters. The Hendersons lived in a picture-perfect subdivision with manicured lawns, American flags on every porch, and the kind of safety that came with a $400,000 mortgage. Their house was a colonial with a wraparound porch and large windows that, I was beginning to realize, offered perfect visibility into every room. I put 9-month-old Emma down for the night around 8, leaving me with 4 hours until the Hendersons returned from their anniversary dinner. At 9:15, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see 2 of them, a tall boy with bleached hair and a girl with multiple ear piercings. They were smiling, but their eyes held the cold calculation of predators sizing up prey. "Hi there," the girl said when I cracked the door open, keeping the chain lock engaged. "We're from the neighborhood. We heard there was a baby here, and we just love kids. Could we maybe come in and see her?" The request was so inappropriate, so bizarre, that for a moment I couldn't respond. Teenagers didn't randomly visit strangers' houses to see babies. "She's sleeping?" I managed. "And I can't have visitors while babysitting. Just for a second." The boy leaned closer to the gap, and I caught a whiff of cigarettes and something chemical. "We babysit all the time. We're really good with kids. When are the Hendersons coming back?" the girl asked, her smile never wavering but her eyes scanning what she could see of the foyer behind me. That question sent ice through my veins. Why would they need to know the parents' schedule unless they were planning something that required their absence? Soon I lied. "They just went to grab dinner." "Cool," the boy said, but neither moved away from the door. "What's your name? We should hang out sometime. You go to OSU, right?" I closed the door without answering and immediately tried calling Mrs. Henderson. Straight to voicemail. She'd mentioned the restaurant had poor cell reception. When I looked out the window again, I saw the other 2 teenagers standing at the edge of the yard, one holding up what was clearly a phone, pointing it at the house. They were documenting the property, recording entry points, maybe even live streaming. Over the next hour, the harassment escalated systematically. The doorbell rang every 10 minutes. When I stopped answering, they began knocking. Soft taps at first, then harder raps that made Emma stir in her crib upstairs. "We know you're in there, Riley," a voice called through the door. My blood froze. They knew my name. How could they possibly know my name? "We just want to meet the baby." The girl's voice was closer now, like she was pressed against the wood. She's so cute. We saw her pictures online. My Instagram account, where I'd posted a photo yesterday of Emma and me with the caption, babysitting this little angel tonight. Key #babysitting life #Milbroco. I'd tagged the location. I'd announced exactly where I'd be and when. At 10:30, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hey Riley, saw your post. We're the ones outside. Why don't you just let us in? We promise we'll be nice to Emma. Another text followed immediately. We know you're alone until midnight. That's plenty of time to get acquainted. I called 911, hands shaking as I whispered our address. There are teenagers harassing me at the house where I'm babysitting. They've been here for over an hour. They know my name and they're texting me. Are they attempting to break in, ma'am? Not yet, but they're asking about the baby, wanting to come inside. They've been watching the house. Officers are en route. Stay on the line. The knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by an ominous silence. I moved from window to window, trying to spot them, but the yard appeared empty. That's when I heard the soft scraping from the back of the house. Someone working at the sliding glass door that led to the patio. I ran upstairs with Emma, locking us in the master bedroom, while frantically trying to reach the Hendersons again. Through the baby monitor, I could hear the distinct sound of glass breaking downstairs. They were inside. Footsteps moved through the house, deliberate, methodical, like they'd planned this invasion. Multiple sets, spreading out to search room by room. Riley, the girl's voice called from downstairs, sing-song and mocking. We found your Instagram. You post a lot about babysitting. Makes it easy to know where you'll be. They were following my digital footprints, using my own social media posts to hunt me. We just want to play with Emma. The boy's voice was closer now on the stairs. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Emma was crying, and I knew they could hear her. They were following the sound, getting closer to our hiding spot. I grabbed the bedroom phone and whispered to the 911 dispatcher. They're in the house. They broke in. I'm locked upstairs with the baby. Units are pulling up now, ma'am. The bedroom door handle rattled, followed by heavy pounding. Open up, Riley. We know you're in there. Through the window, I could see police cars racing up the street. Emergency lights flashing, but no sirens. The pounding stopped immediately. Shit, I heard one of them hiss. Time to go. Footsteps thundered down the stairs, and I heard the sliding door slam shut. By the time officers entered the house, the teenagers had vanished into the maze of suburban backyards. The investigation revealed the full scope of their operation. The four weren't just bored local kids. They were part of a network that targeted babysitters through social media surveillance, looking for opportunities to commit home invasions while families were away. They'd been monitoring hashtags like #babysitting and #babysitting life, cross-referencing location tags with public posts to identify targets. My Instagram account had given them everything. My name, my location, my schedule, even photos of the house's interior. Police found evidence they'd been planning similar operations across 3 counties, always targeting young women who posted about their babysitting jobs online. But they were never caught. The broken sliding door, the abandoned bikes, the threatening texts, all led nowhere. The network had protocols for disappearing when operations went wrong. 6 months later, I received a friend request on Instagram from an account with no profile picture. When I checked their activity, they'd been systematically viewing posts from dozens of babysitters across Ohio, studying their schedules, learning their routines. The message was simple. Still watching your posts, Riley. Still planning playdates. I deleted all my social media accounts and stopped babysitting entirely. But sometimes I wonder about other college students posting innocent updates about their evening jobs, unknowingly broadcasting their vulnerability to predators who've turned digital stalking into a precise science. Because in a world where we document our entire lives online, every post is a potential invitation to the wrong kind of attention. And somewhere in suburban Ohio, there are still teenagers riding bikes through quiet neighborhoods, not because they're bored, but because they're hunting for their next target, one Instagram post at a time. What starts as a seemingly routine evening can quickly become an ordeal of pure terror. Our next chilling true story from a babysitter's night is about to unfold. The first thing that should have warned me was the soft click from the kitchen at exactly 2:03 a.m. Not the normal settling sounds of the Henderson house, but the deliberate sound of a latch being carefully released. I was halfway up the stairs with Emily's bottle when I heard it. That subtle metallic noise that made me pause on the landing and listen to the silence that followed. Emily had been fussing for 10 minutes, her cries echoing through the baby monitor, with that particular urgency that meant she was hungry, not just restless. The Hendersons had warned me she sometimes needed a middle-of-the-night feeding, so I'd crept downstairs to warm her bottle, leaving all the lights off except for the small stove light that cast long shadows across their pristine kitchen. But as I stood there holding the warm bottle, something felt different about the house. The air seemed to move differently, carrying a faint scent that hadn't been there before. Cigarette smoke, and something else. Something organic and unwashed that made my stomach clench with primitive alarm. Through the reflection in the dark kitchen window, I could see myself clearly against the black glass. But there was something else in that reflection, something that made my blood freeze in my veins. A shape among the rose bushes in the backyard, perfectly still, positioned to have a clear view through the window. Someone was watching me, someone who had been standing there long enough to study my movements, to time their approach, to wait for the perfect moment when I would be alone and vulnerable in that pool of yellow light. My name is Rachel Morrison, and until that night in October 23, babysitting had always been my safe way to earn college money. I was a 20-year-old sophomore at Arizona State, and the Henderson family had been my regular Friday night clients for 8 months. They lived in one of those upscale Scottsdale neighborhoods, where the houses sat far apart, and the street lighting was deliberately subdued to maintain the ambience. Tom and Lisa Henderson were ideal employers, always punctual, always paid well. And their 6-month-old daughter Emily was an easy baby who usually slept through the night. They left around 8 p.m. for their monthly dinner date, expecting to return by midnight. The house was familiar territory, sprawling single-story ranch with floor-to-ceiling windows, and an open floor plan that felt airy during the day, but somehow exposed at night. I'd settled into my usual routine after putting Emily down, homework spread across their dining room table, the baby monitor beside me, checking on her every hour. Everything had been normal until she started crying at 2 a.m., demanding her bottle with the persistence only a hungry baby can muster. Now, staring at that reflection in the window, I could see the figure more clearly. A man, medium height, wearing dark clothing that blended with the shadows of the garden. He wasn't moving, wasn't trying to hide. He was simply standing there, watching me with the patient intensity of a predator studying its prey. My hands trembling, I reached for the light switch to plunge the kitchen into darkness, but something made me stop. If I couldn't see him, I wouldn't know where he was or what he was doing. The light that made me visible was also my only way to track his movements. That's when I noticed the back door. The Hendersons had a sliding glass door that led from the kitchen to their patio and garden. I distinctly remembered Tom showing me how to secure it before they left. The handle locked, the security bar in place, the additional deadbolt engaged. 3 separate barriers between the house and the backyard. Now, the door was open. Not wide, just a few inches, but enough to allow someone to slip inside silently. The security bar lay on the floor beside it, carefully removed and set aside. Whoever was in the garden had already been inside the house. Emily's cries intensified through the monitor, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were filled with concrete as the implications crashed over me. Someone had been in the house while I was upstairs, had unlocked the door from the inside, had prepared an escape route or entry point while I was focused on the baby. The figure in the garden shifted slightly, and I caught a glimpse of his face in the reflected light. Weathered features, a thin beard, eyes that seemed to be cataloging every detail of my appearance and the house's layout. This wasn't some random prowler or opportunistic burglar. He was studying the situation with professional attention to detail. I forced myself to back away from the window slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might provoke action. Emily's cries were getting louder, more desperate, but I couldn't go to her. Not while someone was potentially inside the house, moving through the rooms I couldn't see. The baby monitor crackled with static. Then Emily's cries suddenly muffled, as if something was interfering with the transmission. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at the small screen, watching it flicker between normal reception and distorted interference. Someone was in Emily's room. I grabbed the cordless phone from the kitchen counter and dialed 911, my fingers shaking so badly I had to try twice. When the dispatcher answered, I whispered my location and the situation, terrified that speaking too loudly might alert whoever was upstairs to my awareness of their presence. Units are on the way, the dispatcher said. Can you get to a safe location? Before I could answer, the interference on the baby monitor cleared, and Emily's cries resumed their normal volume. But underneath her voice, I could hear something else. The soft sound of someone moving around her room, deliberately and quietly. Ease with the baby, I whispered into the phone. The footsteps upstairs were barely audible, but I could track them through the house as someone moved from Emily's room toward the master bedroom. Searching for something or someone, the parents' room, where valuable items might be kept, where a wall safe might be hidden, where someone might assume the family's most precious possessions would be stored. I crept toward the front of the house, staying low and moving as silently as possible. The Hendersons' front door had a complex electronic lock system that I didn't fully understand, but there was also a traditional deadbolt that I could operate manually. As I reached for the lock, Emily's cries suddenly stopped. The silence was worse than her screaming. Babies don't just stop crying when they're hungry. They escalate until someone feeds them. The sudden quiet meant someone had either picked her up or... I couldn't finish that thought. I unlocked the front door and eased it open, preparing to run to the street where I could flag down the approaching police cars. But as I stepped onto the front porch, I heard Tom Henderson's voice behind me. Rachel, what are you doing? I spun around, and there was Tom, standing in his own living room, still wearing the suit he'd worn to dinner. But something was wrong with the picture. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, and there was a wild look in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Tom? You're back early, I said, confused. There's someone... I know, he interrupted. I saw him. That's why I came back. Relief flooded through me until I noticed what Tom was holding in his right hand. A small revolver, pointed not toward the back of the house where the intruder had been, but directly at me. Where is it, Rachel? Tom's voice was calm, but his hand was rock steady on the gun. I know you found it. I know that's why Marcus is here. Found what? Tom, I don't understand. The drive, he said impatiently. The USB drive I hid in Emily's room, the one with all the files from Henderson Financial Services. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Tom Henderson wasn't the victim of a break-in. He was being hunted by someone who wanted information he'd stolen, and somehow I'd become a liability, someone who might have discovered his hiding place while babysitting. I never found any drive, I said, backing toward the open door. I just take care of Emily. Marcus thinks differently. He's been watching the house for weeks, tracking who comes and goes, who might have access to Emily's room when we're not here. Tom's eyes were bright with desperation. He called me tonight. Said my babysitter was acting suspicious, spending too much time near the nursery. Through the open door behind me, I could hear sirens approaching, but they seemed impossibly far away. Tom heard them too, and his grip tightened on the gun. You called the police, he said. That's going to complicate things. Tom, please. Marcus, he called out suddenly. She's here. She's here. Footsteps pounded down the stairs, and the man from the garden appeared in the hallway. Marcus, apparently, Tom's partner, or blackmailer, or whatever he was. Up close, he was even more menacing, with the kind of face that suggested violence was a casual part of his daily routine. About time, Marcus said. Girl's been causing problems all night. Did you find it? Tom asked. Marcus shook his head. Tore the nursery apart. Either it's somewhere else, or she already took it. They both looked at me with the flat, calculating expressions of people who had moved past normal human considerations. I was no longer Rachel the babysitter. I was a problem to be solved before the police arrived. The baby, I said suddenly. Emily has been quiet too long. Marcus smiled, and it was the most frightening expression I'd ever seen. Kid's fine. Kid's fine. Gave her something to help her sleep through the excitement. The police sirens were definitely closer now, maybe 2 blocks away. Tom and Marcus exchanged a look that communicated volumes without words. We take her with us, Marcus said. Insurance policy. No, Tom replied. Too complicated. Make it look like a burglary gone wrong. They were discussing my murder with the casual efficiency of businessmen planning a meeting. In that moment, I realized that whatever Tom Henderson had stolen, whatever financial crimes he'd committed, killing a college student to cover them up was just another business decision. That's when Emily started crying again. The sound came through the baby monitor, but it was wrong. Too loud, too close. Marcus had brought the monitor downstairs with him, and Emily's cries were coming from somewhere in the house. Not from her nursery. You brought her down here? You brought her down here? Tom asked, alarmed. Had to move her when I searched the room, Marcus replied. She's in the kitchen. In that moment of distraction, as both men turned toward the sound of Emily's cries, I bolted. I ran through the open front door and into the street, just as the first police car rounded the corner, its headlights sweeping across the Hendersons' front yard. The officers found Tom Henderson holding his own daughter in the kitchen, while Marcus tried to escape through the backyard. The USB drive they'd been looking for was eventually discovered inside Emily's teddy bear, a waterproof case hidden in the stuffing that contained evidence of Tom's embezzlement from his financial services clients. Tom pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Marcus was convicted of burglary, kidnapping, and assault. The investigation revealed that Tom had been stealing from client accounts for over 2 years, and Marcus was his enforcer, tasked with retrieving evidence and silencing potential witnesses. I testified at both trials, but I never felt safe until they were both sentenced. Even now, 18 months later, I check my locks obsessively, and I've never babysat again. The thing that haunts me most isn't the gun or the threats, or even the realization that Tom would have killed me to protect his secrets. It's the baby monitor, and how Emily's cries that night sounded different than usual. Desperate in a way that suggested she understood, on some primitive level, that she was surrounded by people who saw her as nothing more than a tool or an obstacle. Last week, I got a message through social media from someone claiming to be Marcus's brother. Just 4 words, he gets out soon. I've changed my address twice since then, but I still wake up at 2 a.m. sometimes, listening for sounds that don't belong, watching reflections in dark windows, wondering who might be standing in the shadows of my new life. Because once you've seen how quickly ordinary people can become killers when their secrets are threatened, you never stop looking over your shoulder. That was just one chilling glimpse into the terrifying possibilities when you're watching someone else's children. Are you ready for another? Because the next haunting true story is right around the corner. The old farmhouse creaked around me, its ancient bones settling in the damp Pennsylvania chill. It was the kind of sound you expected in a place like this, miles from the nearest main road, surrounded by a thick collar of woods. I told myself that a dozen times already. Still, the faint scrape that seemed to echo from the end of the long, shadowy hallway made the hairs on my arms prickle. I held my breath, listening. Little Lily, just 6 months old, was a blessedly sound sleeper, her tiny chest rising and falling in the playpen by the hearth. The Millers wouldn't be back for hours. It's nothing, I told myself, turning a page in my textbook, the words blurring. Just the wind, or a mouse. But the wind wasn't scraping. It was sighing through the eaves. And this sound, it had a rhythm. Unease, cold and sharp, began to needle at the edges of my forced calm. Was I truly alone out here? My name is Sarah. This happened back in the late fall of 2017. I was a sophomore in college, making a bit of extra cash babysitting. The Millers were nice people, new to the area, and their recently renovated farmhouse, while isolated, was cozy. They'd warned me the cell service was spotty, but the landline worked, and they had new, sturdy locks. "You'll be fine, Sarah," Mrs. Miller had said, her smile warm. "It's so peaceful out here." Peaceful, yes, but the silence, I was learning, had teeth. The scraping came again, a little louder this time, like fingernails dragged lightly over wood. I stood up, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The hallway stretched before me, dark beyond the spill of lamplight from the living room. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to magnify the quiet. I peered down the hall. Nothing. Nothing. Just shadows and the closed doors of empty rooms. "Hello?" I called out, my voice a thin tremor. Only silence answered, a heavy, listening silence. I told myself it was the old house, the pipes, anything but what my gut was screaming it was. But a little knot of dread had tightened in my stomach. I found myself glancing at the door, then the windows, checking locks that I knew were already bolted. The woods outside were a black, impenetrable wall under the moonless sky. A sudden sharp rap on the front door made me jump, a small yelp escaping my lips. My heart hammered. I wasn't expecting anyone. The Millers? No, it was far too early. I crept to the small window beside the door, my breath fogging the cold glass. A woman stood on the porch, her silhouette stark against the faint porch light I'd left on. She was hunched slightly, her shoulders shaking. I could hear her ragged breathing even through the thick wood of the door. "Hello? Hello?" I asked, my voice louder than I intended, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. "Oh, thank God." A frantic voice came from the other side. "Please, you have to help me. My dog, he ran off. He ran off into the woods, and my phone. It's dead. Can I please use your phone? I'm so worried." Her voice was choked with what sounded like genuine panic. I hesitated. Everything about her plea screamed of a normal, everyday crisis. A lost pet, a dead phone. It happened. The Millers were kind people. They'd want me to help. Still, the isolation of the farmhouse, the strange sounds I'd heard earlier. "Just a moment," I said, unlatching the deadbolt. I opened the door a crack, the security chain still in place. The woman was in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. Her hair was a mess, tangled with leaves and twigs. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and dirt. She wore a thin jacket, inadequate for the biting November air. She looked utterly wretched and desperate. Her story was plausible. My guard lowered a fraction. I guess so," I said, already reaching for my cell, which I'd thankfully left on the side table near the door. "Come in, just for a second. It's freezing out there." A part of me, the sensible, cautious part, screamed a silent warning. But the image of a lost dog in those dark, cold woods was a powerful one. As I undid the chain, she practically sagged with relief. "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much." She stepped inside, and the smell of damp earth and something else, something acrid and faintly metallic, clung to her. My nose wrinkled. I held out my phone. "Here you go." As she reached for it, her jacket sleeve pulled up slightly. My eye snagged on her forearm. Angry red scratches, deep and raw, crisscrossed her skin from wrist to elbow. They looked fresh. Very fresh. Like she'd been clawing her way through thorny bushes or something else. Something that fought back. "My dog, Buster. He's a beagle," she babbled, her fingers fumbling with the phone. "He just bolted after deer. I think I've been looking for him for an hour." Her eyes, though, weren't looking at the phone. They weren't looking at me. They kept darting, quick and hungry, towards the playpen in the warm glow of the living room, where Lily was stirring, making soft, whimpering sounds in her sleep. A tiny, almost imperceptible shift happened in the woman's expression. The desperation in her eyes was still there, but something else flickered beneath it. A predatory stillness. My blood ran cold. The scratches, the smell, the unwavering focus on the baby. "You know," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, my mind racing, "the Millers have a really loud dog whistle. Maybe that would help. It carries for miles." I was stalling, trying to think. The landline was in the kitchen, deeper into the house. My cell was in her hand. Her head snapped back to me, her eyes narrowing slightly. A whistle? No, I don't think so. He doesn't really come to whistles. A beat of silence. He's usually very good. Inconsistency. Most dog owners train their dogs to come to a whistle or a specific call, especially if they live near woods. What kind of collar does Buster wear? I asked, trying to sound casual, inching back almost imperceptibly. Does it have tags? I can help you look too, once you've made your call. Her gaze was fixed on me now, hard and assessing. The teary distress was gone, replaced by an unnerving intensity. No collar right now. It's at home. She hadn't even tried to dial. My phone was still dark in her grip. The baby let out a louder cry. Lily was waking up. The woman's head turned sharply towards the sound, a strange, tight smile playing on her lips. It wasn't a smile of warmth. It was a smile of anticipation. That's when I saw it, tucked into the waistband of her jeans, partially hidden by her jacket. The glint of metal. Not a buckle. It looked like the handle of something. A tool or a weapon. You know, she said, her voice dropping to a low, almost conversational pitch, but laced with an undeniable threat. I think I'll just wait inside for a bit. Warm up until my friend can get here. He knows these woods. She took a step further into the house, away from the door, towards the living room, towards Lily. Every instinct in my body screamed. This wasn't about a lost dog. I don't think that's a good idea, I stammered, trying to block her path, my body trembling. The Millers are very private people. They wouldn't want. I'm sure they'll understand, she said, her eyes cold now, devoid of any pretense. She was bigger than me, stronger. The fresh scratches on her arm suddenly seemed like a testament to her physical capabilities. Lily started to wail, a full-blown infant cry. The sound seemed to energize the woman. She took another step. My mind was a chaotic whirl of fear, but one thought cut through. I had to protect Lily. I had to get this woman out of the house. Actually, I said, my voice shaking but firm, an idea sparking. I just remembered. Mrs. Miller, said her brother. The state trooper. Might be swinging by tonight to check on things. He's probably on his way now. He worries, you know, with us being so isolated. It was a total lie, a desperate gamble. The woman froze. Her eyes flickered, for the first time, with something that looked like uncertainty. Or was it calculation? A state trooper? Yeah, I pushed, trying to make it sound convincing. He's very protective. Carries well, you know. I let my gaze drift pointedly to her waistband. She looked from me to the crying baby, then back to me. The silence stretched, taut and electric. The only sounds were Lily's cries and the frantic thumping of my own heart. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. Then, with a chilling calmness, she said, My phone seems to be working now, after all. She tapped the screen of my phone, which remained stubbornly blank, and then held it to her ear, though I knew there was no signal where she stood. Yes, hello? I need to report a found dog. Her eyes, hard and unblinking, never left mine. It was a clear, silent threat. She was calling someone, but it wasn't for her fictitious dog. Was it her friend? An accomplice? She took a slow step back towards the door. I think I'll wait for my friend outside. Wouldn't want to disturb the baby any longer. Her voice was smooth as silk, but the menace was palpable. She kept my phone to her ear, backing away, her eyes still locked on me. But when she reached the door, she fumbled with the knob for a second, then pulled it open, never turning her back. She slipped out into the darkness. I slammed the door shut, ramming the deadbolt home, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grasp the metal. I leaned against it, gasping for breath, my legs threatening to buckle. I raced to Lily, scooping her into my arms. Her small, warm body was a fragile anchor in the storm of my terror. I ran to the kitchen landline, my heart pounding in my ears, and dialed 911. My voice a raw whisper as I explained the situation. They promised to send a car immediately, But immediately in these rural parts could mean 20 minutes, half an hour, an eternity. The minutes crawled by. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside, sent jolts of adrenaline through me. I clutched Lily tight, pacing the living room, peering out the windows into the oppressive darkness, terrified the woman was still out there, watching, waiting with her friend. My phone was still with her. Could she track me? Did she know more about the Millers than she let on? Headlights finally swept across the driveway. I'd never been so relieved to see the flashing blue and red lights. The police took my statement. They searched the woods, but found no sign of the woman or any buster. My phone was discovered later, tossed into a ditch about a mile down the road, wiped clean. There were indistinct tracks around the back of the house, near the windows of the nursery. She'd been watching. They never caught her. No woman matching her description was reported missing from any nearby towns or institutions. No reports of a lost beagle either. It was like she'd materialized from the darkness and then dissolved back into it. I don't babysit anymore, especially not in isolated houses. The Millers moved a few months later. They couldn't shake the feeling of unease, and I don't blame them. Sometimes when I'm alone, especially at night, I hear it. That faint scrape, 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 like fingernails on wood, and I see her eyes, darting towards the most vulnerable thing in the room. I'm not sure what she wanted, not really. But I know the scratches on her arms weren't from any dog, and her desperation was a mask for something far more terrifying. I often wonder, if I hadn't lied about the state trooper, what would have happened when Lily woke up? Or who she was really calling on my phone, out there in the silent, waiting dark.